Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Sprague from Persimmon Health. I am a serial entrepreneur working on healthcare technology that helps more people access better quality of care. This podcast is for the movement of innovators, entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, and thought leaders that are advancing the American healthcare system through digital health. In this podcast, we highlight real stories of innovators and enablers of digital health, their opportunities, challenges, and learnings for innovation. We'll cover topics such as startup building and fundraising, entrepreneurship, emerging technologies, and big ideas to transform healthcare. We invite you to participate in this community, share your stories, and accelerate the movement. Thank you. We have an awesome pod. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to the Digital Health Community Podcast by Persimmon Health, the healthcare arm of Leapfrog Technology, where we will explore the groundbreaking advancements in artificial intelligence and their potential to revolutionize healthcare as we know it. And by this, we really mean generative, specifically the LLMs and GPTs of the world. I'm Chris, your host. And I'm joined by my good friend, Bimal, who has been our head of product going on 8 years.
Hey Chris, happy to be here.
Yes. So, Bimal, we've both been working with AI for quite some time now. But for our listeners, why don't you share a bit about your background in AI and health tech?
Sure. So I would like to say three things. Number one is I'm deeply interested in applied AI. So by that
Mm-hmm.
means I build a team around applying AI in different applications and use cases in health at Leapfrog. That's one. And
Mm-hmm.
second, by the extension of that, we launched an AI startup called Kaboom within Leapfrog, which was a no-code recommendation builder.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, the third one is for the last couple of years, have been working with healthcare startups how to integrate AI into their applications and their softwares and their products. And even I wrote a playbook called Lean AI Playbook for startups.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, and the fourth one, which one more thing which I didn't add was playing with ChatGPT since it came out. Primarily, it came out in November, ChatGPT 3, and have been using the playgrounds for different use cases.
Mm-hmm.
I'm stunned by how good it is and how
Yep.
great the potential to disrupt every piece of the industry is. It's a great platform shift.
Right, right. Yeah, and for
Yeah.
me, I would say AI is more of I would call it old stomping grounds. Back to my grad school research days with GE and working on
Hmm.
projects like we worked together, like Iris Chatbot.
Yep.
That was a pre-GPT chatbot
Hmm.
that helped patients reschedule appointments and refill medications, all by
Hmm.
chatting with an agent. And like you, I've collaborated with numerous startups
Hmm.
around AI. And I know we're both passionate about AI and its potential for healthcare. So today, I think we'll really focus in on the role of AI in modern healthcare, but
Hmm.
specifically focusing on the generative AI and LLM and
Hmm.
ChatGPT.
Hmm. Awesome. Sure.
Yeah. No, I mean it's an exciting time to be in this field. And I don't think we're the only ones that think so.
Yep.
I know that many prominent figures are discussing
Right.
this platform shift.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
So if you listen to All in Pod
Mm-hmm.
or a few
Mm-hmm.
figures like Vijay Pandey from A16Z and who writes
Mm-hmm.
physician Eric Topol who writes a lot about these things. They
Mm-hmm.
have been really thinking about okay what's the potential impact is going to be, and all of them are calling it a platform shift. And there is a
Mm-hmm.
amazing article by A16G which they say right okay next
Mm-hmm.
biggest company is going to be a health tech company and they lay out the reasons why it's going to be. And I
Mm-hmm.
think this large language model, which actually sits on top of the paper, come from attention is all you need, which is transformed by Google and University of Toronto paper. Actually, that's a
Right.
hammer, and all of those things are looking to like a nails to be so problems to be solved. So this is a
Yep.
great platform shift. I think a lot of things changed and huge potentials of it, and it's not just of course like everybody is
Hmm.
talking
Hmm.
about how they can integrate large language models into their products.
Yeah, and they're using big language around
Yeah.
this platform shift. They're saying it's the biggest thing since, or on par even
Yep.
with mobile and social. And I think it was Sachs who said even on par with the internet.
Yep.
So yeah, it's something we have to pay attention to, just in case they're 25% right.
Yep.
Um, yeah.
And
Hmm.
it absolutely can be like,
Hmm.
which astonishes me is it's the fastest growing company or fastest growing product which
Hmm.
has higher user adoption, right?
Hmm.
And I think that's not the only complete story to it. If you think about which are other fastest growing companies, Facebook, Google, and all of those companies were the fastest growing prior to open chat GPT.
Yep.
But
Yep.
difference is that those were multi-user products. And what that means is there is an inherent network effects. And
Right.
ChatGPT is a single user utility. And by that, even if when it was a single user utility product, it grew up to $100 million in million users in
Right.
few months, right? Which is extraordinarily or ordinary. And imagine what would happen. They would start unlocking those multi-user products, and when they're more, they're going to use reinforcement learning and for particular use cases, they're going to expand to like billion users pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, I think that's incredible. I mean, Facebooks and the Googles and the like, they were basically the impetus for creating the term viral within tech.
Yep.
And yet, what took them years took ChatGPT 3 months.
Mhm.
Like you
Yep.
said, 100 million users. And gosh, I think it's been quite a ride. They
Yep.
say innovation is slow and then all at once. And I think that absolutely is true in AI and healthcare, from recent advances like deep learning and
Hmm.
uses in life sciences like automated drug discovery, and of course, a monumental potential in the form of GPTs.
Hmm.
I'd say personally, I've explored via ChatGPT and the like, from navigating medical literature to managing minor health queries.
Hmm.
And ChatGPT has been impressively helpful. Um, but I would say beyond our personal anecdotes, this could shake up the entire healthcare startup industry, right?
For sure, I think from let's look at this startup industry from the patient's point of view, right? For
Mm-hmm.
example, right, if I were a patient, what kind of products that I would be using? One product
Mm-hmm.
is for and foremost is gathering information. And
Right.
which one is gathering information about particular disease, right? And which one is the most prominent one? WebMD. Right? We go to whatever, for example, I have a, let's say, constipation, then I go to WebMD and see what the constipation, what the symptoms are, and try to do some home remedies
Yeah.
recommended there, right? So that's what we do. But the limiting factor of WebMD is that it's very general, right? In general, in
Right.
sense that everybody look at the same piece of content, and not only that, it's the same comprehensive level. It's not about like
Mm-hmm.
even the PhD level sees the same thing, even the fifth grader sees the same thing. Now, that's where the WebMD can be disrupted in such a way that
Mm-hmm.
so I
Mm-hmm.
can feed in my information. For
Right.
example, I did this. I had a
Okay.
blood work done. I had a blood work done, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I go and Google about it, okay, I have blood work done, but I will not say my specific use case because it will be HIPAA violation. So I want to keep my privacy intact. So I said the following thing. One, this is what I said the following prompt. I had a blood work done for X. Here is the report. Explain
Mm-hmm.
that to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it explained it to me into my personal context, and I gave in my, like, of course, my age, my what the food I have been eating, what habits do I have. When I feed into all of those things, ChatGPT gave a really, really great answer, which is very
Hmm.
personal to me. And again,
Right.
it helped me in such a way that it humanized the technical languages of a medicine. So what that
Hmm.
equipped me was when I went to talk to my doctor, I was aware what it meant. And of
Right.
course, like when you go and talk to the doctor, they don't have enough time to explain to you that they only had 8 minutes
Hmm.
in a personal visit. And I think because of that, ChatGPT had explained to me what each of the parameters are, what I should improving and decreasing. I could ask a very specific questions to my doctor, right? And
Right.
this is what the WebMD cannot do from the
Right.
patient perspective. Now imagine this. This is from the
Hmm.
patient perspective gathering information.
Hmm.
Now,
Hmm.
if you think about, so when I say in the healthcare space, right, three types of people. One who are
Hmm.
achievers who want to, like what athletes who want to achieve things. They need to
Hmm.
personalize things.
Hmm.
Second
Hmm.
category is people who are let's say living, who want a healthy life, let's say lifers. So even for them, like
Hmm.
they need to have a holistic picture of it. And third category is the fighters who have chronic diseases. So
Right.
imagine for them, right, managing their health conditions, understanding different things, and even the chronic diseases, they can be of different literacy level. And according to that particular literacy level, even
Yeah.
healthcare providers can curate the patient education according to their level. I think all
Yeah.
of these things was possible before, but the cost was immense. Now it can be done
Hmm.
at the that 100th of a cost because the fundamental technology is just there. Like I said, hammer is just there and it need to be implemented. So
Hmm.
in that regard, from the patient perspective, I'm talking about this patient information and education perspective, it can be truly transformative. Like WebMD example, and let's talk about
Hmm.
let's say like, for provider's sense, right? Diagnostic
Right.
and diagnostic, the people have been working on like convolutional neural network for many years, and they have been really good at diagnosing diseases using like diagram images and X-ray images and so on. For example, one of my friends work at Vidya Health, and what they use is they use dental images to diagnose all of this. They're working on that part and
Right.
transformative.
Or Zebra Medical Vision,
Jibra,
AI Doc.
exactly.
Yeah.
AI
Hmm.
Dog and all of those
Hmm.
companies, right? So it has been there. Now, interesting thing is that the limiting
Hmm.
factor for those is those are not multimodal. They can only
Hmm.
take
Hmm.
images. They cannot take structured data. They cannot take unstructured data. Imagine like structured data, unstructured data. Unstructured data means conversation that you have with your doctor.
Hmm.
Structured
Hmm.
data
Hmm.
means all the like all the this wearable data, all the sleep data, all the health data that can be collected, and in
Right.
comparison that like all the X-ray or diagram images that can be done and created and 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 all using all of this information, more holistic picture of a patient can be painted, and the doctors can diagnose it really well, and it
Hmm.
scales.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
those are these two examples, right? I think, and next would be the administrative efficiency about payers, all they're talking about right
Right.
now, how much waste that happens. Even in administrative efficiency, doctors taking notes, transcribing, and all of those things is a lot of work, and that all of those can be automated and augmented by AI. So therefore,
Hmm.
from
Hmm.
efficiency perspective, it's amazingly transformative, and no wonder people are saying it's a platform shift.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in fact, on the Leapfrog side of things, what we've been using ChatGPT for is summarizing 360-degree reviews, performance reviews, where
Hmm.
people get multiple assessments from their peers and their managers and their customers, etc. And GPT summarizes, oh, what are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? Where do you go from here? And yeah, it's incredible, even on an untrained data set what it
Hmm.
can do. And yeah, you mentioned a lot of great use cases. And I think what you nailed is that the, and I think we should circle back to this paradigm shift of
Hmm.
taking in context
Yep.
and truly personalizing and humanizing responses. Even with WebMD, the user has to synthesize it themselves,
Yep.
without something that's personalized or takes an input from them.
Hmm.
And then you look at big recent industries, let's say since COVID, like telemedicine. We've
Yep.
seen companies like Teladoc and Doctor on
Right.
Demand flourish. Now, imagine integrating something like ChatGPT. It could provide real time information, assist doctors with potential treatment options, or break down complex medical terms for
Yep.
patients in context while they're curious about their treatments. And I'm sure there's more. Mental health, maybe you could talk about that.
For sure, I think mental health, such as what this big information, such as even the consumer health space, right? Let's say talk
Right.
about, let's say, like even Calm app or the Headspace app or Ginger or any. I think Live Health is one which is more B2B. All of those, like more
Hmm. Hmm.
holistic information about what human preferences are. For example, like people talk a lot about let's say
Hmm.
meditation for like mental health, and learning meditation is extremely hard. You and I know, right? We both practice
Yep. Hmm.
meditate, and this meditation is really hard. But sometimes like other things such as hypnotherapy or like yoga
Hmm.
nidra and all
Hmm.
breathing exercises, all of those could work. And in that scenario, I think what is really helpful is based on the feedback. I think that kind of personalized, let's say, playlist can be made, and they can be, people can start importing those things in a
Right.
longer period of time, so that it becomes more longer period of time, and then feedback is inbuilt, so that what works for them can be reinforced, and what doesn't work cannot be informed, and it can really be personalized. I think it's very transformative.
Yeah, that personalization is not just at the long term
Yep.
playlist level, it could be at the immediate level. For example, remote patient monitoring
Right.
or physiological monitoring.
Okay.
You
Yep.
think about companies like With Things and Bioformers.
Yep.
ChatGPT could really enhance these platforms by providing real time personalized advice based on the data they've collected basically right now.
And also, it's, I think we were working with one of the startups, and I won't name it, but one of the
Hmm.
startups problem that startup was trying to solve was comprehension, right? When you even talk to your
Hmm.
coaches, even when you talk
Hmm.
to,
Hmm.
let's say, your psychologist, when you talk to your therapist, right? One of the huge challenges is the language, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
me not having the right words at the right time to express myself and elucidate my problem. And what it was trying to do was augment that and standardize the conversation between the patient and the, let's say, therapist or provider, and therefore reducing the let's say,
Hmm.
communication, right? And that's where the scalable form of this language model, large language model, is extremely useful in such a way.
Right.
Previously, it's not, right. It's not scalable at all. Now it's like one, there is an assistant who is going to translate and transcribe and standardize all the conversation that happening between patient and the provider, and that's going to be transformative in delivery of care, be it mental or be it other kind of care.
Yeah, and so I think the scope is indeed massive.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
as these LLMs mature, the potential for startups and even existing healthcare players to leverage AI is only going to increase. So it's really an exciting time to be in
Yeah.
this field.
So I think, which is also exciting in such a way that I was watching this Google I/O, and they released Mid-Palm 2, which is they
Hmm.
train it for in the context of the medicine, and I think the Mid-Palm 2 can pass MLE
Mm.
at the expert level. I think 87% or something like that, which the average is around 60. People get 60%. So
Okay.
so it's already on better than most test takers. So in that scenario, you are actually talking with someone who has a vast scope of knowledge. And another technical thing about large language model
Hmm.
is they do not forget. That's what his attention to all detail is, that they do not forget, and they can synthesize multiple levels of it, right? And
Hmm.
that's amazing when you're talking to someone or the
Yep.
doctor is using it. You actually have an assistance of somebody who has the let's say, access to a portal which has who knows everything and anything, right? And that can be, at the disposal to make a decision while while giving care, providing care to the patients, and that.
Absolutely. Yeah, they can't forget, and we all know the customer support automated voice respondent version of forgetting and
Yeah.
saying what you want to do next or dialing in, and oftentimes you end up back at square zero.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, conversational AI has come
Yep.
a long way, and maybe we should review some of those evolutions, and let's try to keep it interesting, but
Yeah.
take a step back and examine the timeline of AI.
I think you are
Uh,
you are encyclopedia in that, Chris. I think
yeah, I'm a student.
we
Yeah, not an encyclopedia, but I'll regurgitate what I've
sure. I
learned.
think so. I
Um,
think let's go through a brief history of
sure.
this conversational AI.
Yeah. I mean, the first generation of conversational AI was like, let's say, the early stages of
Yeah.
a child learning to speak. And this is where we, let's say, first encounter things like Siri, which debatably has not gone that far, or had those frustrating chats with rule-based conversation trees driven
Yeah.
chatbots. And they were capable of handling specific commands, but struggled with context.
Right. So even
Mm-hmm.
now, when we use, say, I use Google Assistants and hey Google, do this and do that, and if I speak in a string of languages, it just goes, it goes berserk. It doesn't understand anything.
Exactly. And they did their best, but they were
Yeah.
quite limited. And still, they paved the way for the next generation. And as we moved in kind of a iteration, generation two, machine learning came into play. And
Yeah.
the AI systems could learn from data and improve over time. And they were more accurate in terms of assessing, say, a patient's intent, but still
Yeah.
lacked context and struggled
Hmm.
with complex interactions.
Hmm.
And then generation three, built upon generation two, started integrating a lot of data. So, integrating
Yep.
deep learning, neural networks, and this allowed them to really better understand language and recognize patterns. But they still struggled with providing consistently accurate and contextually relevant responses or generating uncanned responses that made any sense in context.
Yeah, I think one of the drawbacks of the third generation was they used something called recurrent neural network. And
Hmm. Hmm.
to give an example, the translation. So if you're translating from language A to language B, what it did was say, my name is Bimal. If you want to translate that to like, let's say Nepali, मेरा नाम Bimal ho is like what it did was, so it translated my into a Nepali version more and like name
Hmm.
into another word. Just it did word and word instead of taking entire in a sentence to sentence translation, right? And that's where it breaks down. Sometimes like
Right.
in different languages, subject, a verb, object. Sometimes in other languages, object comes first, and that's where the entire it breaks down there because it doesn't have that memory of like what was the context of it, and that's
Yeah,
where
the,
it just
the, the, the memory is fascinating. And I think
yeah.
that's where the story gets really exciting is with this fourth generation like ChatGPT,
Hmm.
that we're seeing a real game changer. But
Hmm.
with generation four, we're witnessing this tipping point in
Hmm.
conversational user experience.
Hmm.
They can understand context, generate relevant responses, create a more natural and conversational and inviting user experience. And this is a massive leap forward from that toddler stage we started at. And
Hmm.
it's opening up the world
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
possibilities in healthcare and
Hmm.
beyond.
Awesome. That's a great summary of four generations.
Well, thank you. Now, so that's where we're at.
Yeah.
I think, Bimal, it's time to put on our futurist hats. So let's imagine we've entered this utopian scenario with ChatGPT and it's completely transformed healthcare. Can you give me a hypothetical snapshot of that future?
Sure. I think, as I said before, so if you look at from patient's perspective, the patient education, the diagnostic, uh, the administrative efficiency, and
Hmm.
the pay in the payer side of it, right? All of those things. So what I'm actually, let's say, it's just not me. Many people have predicted this. Like the biggest company is going to be a consumer healthcare company. When you say consumer, it's end user is the consumer. I think the few examples, like the great article is written by A16Z called the title called the biggest company is going to be the healthcare company. If you, for me, if you talk about it, like for example, if there is a $4 trillion spent in the U.S. alone, and the US alone, if you think about like all these big companies such as Apple, Google, Microsoft, and all, they are entering towards in healthcare space because they want to add the next $1 trillion valuation into their in their companies, right? So my prediction is that there is going to be a full stack version of it, full stack company. For example, what's the full stack company in another physical space is full stack company is Tesla. So if you think about it, Tesla is a car company, but is it a battery company? Is it a car dealership company? Is it a software company? Or is it a car manufacturing company? It's all of those, right? That's the reason why this reached to and it's possible because technology has reached to a certain point. Like many things can be automated, and automating the manufacturing can be automated. There are a lot of batteries can be automated. The software can be automated. Because of that, it made it possible. I'm not discounting it. It's hard, but if you want to do that, there's 30 years, let's say 30 years ago, pre-internet era, it would have been impossible to do so, right? So therefore, so my prediction in the consumer interface is that because most of the patient information, the diagnostic, clinical decision support, the administrative efficiency, and all those could be automated. What 50 people used to do, one AI agent can do it, right? Therefore, there is going to be AI first healthcare company that's going to do it differently than what the incumbents are doing, and therefore what is going to is capable of creating this vertically integrated.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Company.
And you nailed one thing that is the hard part of a full stack company to scale, which is the people. And what I would challenge is, can we think of ChatGPT as your personal healthcare assistant and your 24/7 virtual doctor? What do you think about that?
I think it's truly possible because, and there's a correlate to this, right? 30 years ago, if people ask, right, you are going to walk with a supercomputer in your pocket, If 30 years ago people said that, they will be, are you crazy, right? So now today is virtually 4 billion people have supercomputer in your pocket. Right? Similarly, like every human being is going to have a super doctor in their pocket because super doctor, because the transformative thing about the mobile or even a PC was graphical user interface, right? Because of that, you don't have to write a command. Therefore, GUI changed everything. Therefore, it was accessible to common people, and that's the reason why. And that again exponentially expanded, and that capability in releasing the smartphone era. Similarly, in the super doctor in your pocket is because how do people engage in a physical environment? Through conversation. And the same user experience is being delivered through a technology, right? Therefore, I think the conversational UX is that transformative bit of technology which is going to empower to have a super doctor in your pocket.
Yeah, let's talk more about doctors because we've talked a lot about this utopian potential for patients. What about doctors? What does this potential utopia look like for them?
So for them, I think what we hear mostly is from the doctors is that they became doctors to treat patients, not being swamped into administrative documentations, right? I think the lowest hanging fruit can be is documentation, right? That's augmenting them, documenting. That's one. And of course, another lowest hanging fruit is the clinical decision support with the various source of data and saying, okay, giving the right piece of information about our patient at the right time, making it like reduce
Right.
reduce their mistakes, right? So all of those points. I think that's lowest hanging fruit. And another thing is we should flip the business models completely. So we would completely, such as right now, this because fee for service business models is because of that people have to document a lot. Right? What if it can be transformed
Right.
into a, let's say, subscription based model in which like documentation is not to, for example, today if you go to any SaaS companies, does any SaaS company need to document what the user is doing? Not. There
Correct.
is embedded into the product. The tracking is embedded into the product, right? It's just it happens in the background. There was similar kind of thing can be enabled in which the doctors can focus on I think focus on the patient, and also more and more,
Right.
right? They can focus on they can give more time to the exceptional cases, whereas the major of the cases can be done by at by an agent with the
Absolutely.
supervision of it, I think.
Yeah. I think A16Z was painting a similar future maybe a year ago. They had this canonical podcast on healthcare, and completely agree. And the waste that you're talking about is real. I think there's
Yeah.
the 2016 study by the Annals of Internal Medicine that for every hour a doctor spends with the patient, they spend 2 hours on paperwork.
Yep. Yep.
And you're talking about this huge opportunity to
Yep.
improve the efficiency of the healthcare system. So we talked about efficiency, we talked about experience, but the big thing is access. Like, how would all of this help democratize healthcare?
Yep. So all of these healthcare is again. So when you are moving from medicine 2.0 to 3.0, which is 2.0 is about treating a disease, whereas 3.0 is about focusing life health span, focusing on preventive disease and so on and so forth, right? Because of the access of data, more patient we are hoping is more patient are aware of it and they can take care of their own health so that they become less
Right.
sick in the first place. I think that I think this personal access to health information, which is much more holistic, is good is a huge enabler for patients to build their health and take charge of their own health, right? That's a huge democratization in itself. And second thing is democratic in the sense that it's cheaper and faster to build, let's say, AI diagnostic tools, right? Clinical
Right.
decision support tools. Those are going to enable in such a way the applications are going to emerge much faster than it used to be, and the developing those applications will be much cheaper. That's going to democratize it. One is direct impact, another is enablement.
Right. Yeah, and absolutely agree about that information aspect. And
Yeah,
right, we talk about the fee for service is
yeah,
sick care, right? We only care for people when they're sick instead of preventing them from getting sick or keeping people healthy. And I think a lot of that
yep,
barrier for many people, myself included, it's just social and psychological. It's hard for me to talk proactively to someone about my health, and that could be an uncomfortable subject for me. But in some ways, it's easier to talk to a bot,
yep,
right? If I'm curious about how to take care of myself or I'm curious about symptoms. No, I'm not going to go to a clinic and wait for an hour and talk to a stranger and open up. And I think that does lead to people coming in only when they're sick, only when they have clearly chronic conditions. So I think that the potential
not
rewards,
not only
absolutely,
that,
yeah.
not only that, but also see like when you have a mental health problem or when you have a disease, right? One of the reasons why you don't go visit let's say provider or doctor is that it's costly, it's expensive, right? For example, you want it expensive, therefore you wait till the end when you really have to go. I think what democratizing is that, oh, I have this problem right now. I have an expert,
Yep.
the super doctor who I can talk to by paying a few bucks, right? Related to the thousands of dollars or hundreds of dollars which may charge, right?
Yep.
I think that itself is going to can impact a huge, hugely in healthcare.
Agree. Yeah, in BIM, so there's two more issues I want to cover, maybe a few minutes
Yep.
each. Um, and we've talked about the utopian scenarios, but there's this double-edged sword where we've been
Yep.
talking about the sunny side of the street and AI-driven healthcare utopia. But let's take a detour down the darker alley, and we're talking about potentially Black Mirror levels of dystopia here. What are some of the risks and concerns that would keep you up at night?
For me, I think one of the things which has already, again, I love to give the corollaries, right? So let's talk about internet. Like when you talk about internet, it was all open internet, everybody had access to democratize that. What really
Hmm.
happened? When I talk about 4 billion people accessing internet in before, billion people having a supercomputer in there. So what's the portal into the world is this Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and let's say a few other Microsoft product and Apple products,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
4 or 5 handful of companies monopolizing. That's the internet for them, right? I
Right.
think in a similar vein, what worries me most is when these technology enables happen, when the AI and right now is AI agents have not been become right that prolific. But when agents become prolific and when closed AI loops become prolific, so in that scenario, of small company, a handful of company can have a monopoly over healthcare delivery system, and then
Hmm. Hmm.
and human beings are living as a subject to those
Absolutely.
few handful of companies, right? And that's terrifying, right? That's a black level, black
Yeah,
mirror
no,
level,
that's a
right?
Black Mirror. And
Yeah,
then, I mean, I think another one is, there's this haunting question of accuracy, right? So imagine a patient gets a diagnosis from an AI system. They follow the recommended treatment, but it turns out the diagnosis was wrong. And I mean, the internet is full of instances where ChatGPT is
yeah,
wildly assertive in its opinions, but
yeah.
completely factually incorrect, and the consequences could be catastrophic or even fatal. Even today, when you ask a question to ChatGPT, it says prefaces, "I'm not a certified health
Correct.
professional and do not take this as medical advice. I am not a lawyer," type thing. But the challenge is a lot of people are going to ignore
Yep.
that,
Yeah.
and I think we've been painting a picture of this Black Mirror episode now. That's a chilling thought, and it raises a big question, which is if something does go wrong, who's on the hook?
For sure, I think that's exactly the reason why OpenAI or ChatGPT has that disclaimer that I am not a healthcare professional. So
Hmm.
that's a
Hmm.
disclaimer in which frees them from all the repercussions that come from that.
Hmm.
Now, having said that, right, I think that's a technological challenge. What that means is the corpus of data the ChatGPT is trained on is an open internet, right? After it gets trained on the healthcare specific data, and again the model is tuned after this reinforcement learning through human feedback, and the human feedback is more doctors, more two ends, right? One end is the corpus of data is get trained or is the medical literature. That's one. And second is the model is tuned to the human feedback, and the human feedback is given
Hmm.
by the more doctors, and the accuracy will be much more higher. Plus, I think another layer is the human in the loop, right? When someone is
Hmm.
happening,
Hmm.
it can be automatically flagged when somebody is hallucinating it, and the multiple AI agents cross verifying each other. For example, this is what I do. I told you before, I have a newsletter called Gut Spare, and I'll be curating
Hmm.
content
Hmm.
about gut
Hmm.
microbiome, and this is exactly what I do. So I know what is right and what is wrong. But for me to scale faster, I use two more models. For example, I use ChatGPT 4 to create a content, and sometimes I need to fact check that. What I do is I copy paste and go into bot and say fact check each of the sentences, right? So in this
Yeah.
scenario, so when I'm mixing two models which is
Right,
trained
right. But you're you're
independently,
you're you're like uniquely positioned to know that you need to do that, right?
exactly, yeah,
So I think there is this delicate balancing act, and we need to push for democratization of healthcare,
yeah,
make it more
yeah,
accessible and affordable and efficient through AI, but at the same time, we need to guard against those risks
Yeah,
you were talking around with monopolization, the
right.
potential for AI mistakes, and of course, we've hardly touched on privacy of data and who owns what, and
I
all of the like that comes with compliance.
so
But yeah, go ahead.
we are still so early that this innovation is moving so fast that regulations are far behind. For example, right, even the regulations such as when you talk about in the earlier we talked about it can be multimodal, right? Multimodal in
Right.
the sense of input of data and also in the output of let's say inferences, right? One model can perhaps like it is for like for cancer or not to is there a limp or not to does it have all of those things, right? It can be multimodal
Right.
both in training and both in the inference part of
Correct.
it. Whereas whereas the current in FDA and all like it's very okay, very specific to one use case, right? Does this model does X, Y, X or not, right? So the FDA approval process is that. So what happens to those the FDA approval process when the even input is multimodal and
I
even
know.
the inference is multiple model, right? We don't know that.
Right. Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then there's just the operationalization,
Yeah.
productionalization of these things. Like,
Right.
is ChatGPT ever going to be HIPAA compliant? Are they, like with non-health related conversations, going to use private and regulated data to train their models? And is there an ethical and legal quagmire there that we're going to
I,
have to cross? And this
I
whole
think
data ownership issue.
so. I look at from two perspectives, right? From the technical perspective and the human adoption perspective. So from a technical perspective, what I think about this platform, about OpenAI or Google, is that they are more at the platform level, which is more at the infrastructure level. So on top of that, right, there will be application layers such as like simply who is application layers, right? For example, like there will be, let's say, I'm making this up, uh, health health GPT, right? In health GPT, which will be like more HIPAA compliant, right? HIPAA compliant, and for example, data is stored in separate, and there are more anonymization happening. All of those things like GDPR compliant based on the any compliance education. I am guessing that's going to happen. That's the reason why even ChatGPT wants to prove to the world that this is possible. Therefore, they have run the ChatGPT part of it. But the healthcare specific, I think there will be application layers on top of that platform, and it will be designed
Yeah.
about the HIPAA and all those things. And there will be multiple. I hope there are multiple players on that part. There is
Right.
there is competition on that part, so that there is no monopoly on that part, and on that part, and still like we get the benefit of the democratization of it. But for me, that's more of a technical challenges, and the rate is and the rate, the money that flowing, the capital that flowing into the human capital that flowing to
Right.
build all those things, they'll accelerate. But more importantly, what is really challenging part is the human adoption, right? For
Right.
example, adoption part. Technology is easy, right? For easy to scale, bits is easy to scale, right? Which atoms, which is physical goods, is relatively harder to scale because of manufacturing, logistics, transport, and all of those things. But human emotions are much more complex, complex
Right.
in that regard, right? So in this healthcare space, right? Give you a brief example of HL7, right? Which is
Right.
interoperability. It came out in I think A's, and the FHI came out in like in late 2000s or 2009's ends, and still we're talking about interoperability, and there is a huge challenges. And why is that happening? It's because like to make a decision in the health system, there are multiple stakeholders, right? There's doctors, there's administrative staff, there's nurses, there's
Right.
patients, right?
Right.
And they already have a legacy system. There are a lot of things to worry about. So for that reason, I think it's going to take a little longer to
Right.
adopt this
Yeah,
technology.
healthcare is always slow, and then now the human factor is there because AI is competing with that human factor, not just IT.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I think Bimal, it's clear that the journey towards AI-driven healthcare is
yeah,
complex. I think we
yeah.
both believe it's a journey worth taking because the potential benefits are huge, and we're
Right.
excited to see where it leads.
For sure, man. I think I'm very excited about this thing. Hence, like I'm excited about like intersection of this health and wellness and AI and building products. And again, and we have the opportunity and the platform to be more holistic and more patient centric. I think that's the reason why I concur with likes of David Sachs and everybody saying it's a platform shift like
Absolutely.
the internet is, because even for a small, because we know from that, right? Even for example, building a personalized system, building a recommended system, when we built Kaboom, right? It was a lot of heavy lifting. Now
Yep.
now you can go simple. You can do it for yourself, right? Give three movies that you
Hmm.
like.
Hmm.
Hey, and prompt like this. Hey, ChatGPT. Hey, like I like these three movies. Can you give me recommend another movie? And most likely, like if you give that prompt, ChatGPT will give
Yep.
you a very accurate
Right.
prediction for you, right? And that's
Absolutely.
democratization or personalization, and that's very easy to do. And hopefully, this thing is transferable to healthcare space as well.
I think we're going to find out because of
Yeah,
that money and startups and everything that's behind this. And I think we're going to need to revisit the state of learning and trial and error just as consistently as this evolves. Bimal, I look forward to our next podcast where we explore maybe the current state, maybe share some of our own health related LLM conversations we've been alluding
sure.
to,
Great.
and maybe invite one of the startups working with the ChatGPTs of the world to share their progress.
For
I want to
sure.
thank you for your time and insights.
My pleasure. And see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you. Thanks for listening to this podcast and being a part of this movement. This podcast is brought to you by Persimmon Health, and offering by Leapfrog technology that's purpose built to help innovators imagine, build, and scale digital health products. We're passionate about fixing healthcare and have worked on over 50 digital health products. If you want to share your story or want to work together, please shoot an email to hello@persimmonhealth.com. Thank you once again, and I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.